Hey, check it out, a little bit of Star Trek history. It's the first O'Brien episode. You can tell they were still fine-tuning the formula, though. No torture or trauma or suffering. He and Keiko don't even have kids yet. Enjoy these days, O'Brien. This is a review of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Wounded. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know how Chief O'Brien is able to prevent a war through the power of song, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. Let's take a look back at The Wounded, or as I like to call it, the backdoor pilot for Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The Enterprise is on a survey mission along the Federation border with the territory of the Cardassians, a people we're just now hearing about for the first time, who apparently had been at war with the Federation for decades before finally signing a peace treaty last year. They sound like standard TNG villains of the week. I'm sure we won't be hearing very much about them after this. Anyway, while Picard regales the bridge crew with stories of his time fighting Cardassians as captain of the Stargazer, we cut away to the home of newlyweds Miles and Keiko O'Brien, where we find Miles poking uncertainly at his breakfast and second-guessing every decision he's ever made to lead him to this point. Chief O'Brien says, "Listen, sweet cheeks, I'm a real man, and I need real food. Corned beef, and cabbage, and mutton shanks, and potatoes. Sweet Jesus, why are there no potatoes on my plate? There should always be potatoes on my plate. There's a magic food hole in the wall of our apartment that makes potatoes on demand. Is this how you honor our sacred marriage vows?" Keiko's like, "Shit, fine, you ask the magic food hole to make whatever you want for dinner." O'Brien's like, "Yes, potatoes!" And then the ship is rocked by weapons fire, and O'Brien, calling upon the finely honed instincts that served him well across years of brutal combat experience, says, "Something's wrong." Indeed, we cut back to the bridge where Picard and the others are responding to the arrival of a Cardassian ship, which immediately began attacking them. The Enterprise fires back, and pretty soon things settle down, and the commander of the Cardassian ship calls and says, "Hey, how's it going? Thank you for not laughing at my ridiculous and superfluous headgear." Picard says, "We have a peace treaty, man. What's with shooting at us?" And the Cardassian, who introduces himself as Gul Macet, explains that 2 days ago, a Federation starship attacked and destroyed an unarmed Cardassian science station in the Quayar system. I mean, that sucks for the Cardassians, but still, it's kind of cool to hear that in the future there will be a whole-ass star system named after Baltimore Orioles legend Mike Cuellar. Picard jumps on a call with a Starfleet admiral who tells him that they've confirmed a Federation ship has crossed the border into Cardassian territory and destroyed a science station. The ship is the USS Phoenix, under the command of Captain Ben Maxwell. The Admiral tells Picard to find Maxwell and get him to knock it off, and to take Gul Macet and 2 of his officers along, as a show of good faith to the Cardassians. At an informal staff meeting on the bridge, Picard informs the others about their Cardassian guests and tells everybody to be nice. He turns to Data and says, "Is there anyone on the Enterprise who served with Captain Maxwell?" And Data's like, "Yeah, Chief O'Brien. I can talk to him if you want. He's a good friend. I even gave his wife away at their wedding." Picard's like, "That won't be necessary, Robo. Just tell O'Brien I need to talk to him and then go back to playing the violin or whatever the hell you do." Riker and Troy greet the Cardassians when they beam over, and as they're leaving the transporter room, Troy turns back to O'Brien like, "Whoa, man, did you just think the space N-word at the Cardassians? You know that's still a sin, right? Jesus knows what's in your heart, and you will be judged." There's a meeting in the observation lounge with the senior staff, and Chief O'Brien, and Gul Macet and his officers. Picard reviews their efforts to find Captain Maxwell and promises total transparency with the Cardassians. Then he points out O'Brien and says, "I asked an AI if anyone on my crew had also served with Captain Maxwell, and it pointed me to Chief O'Brien, so he's going to be in this episode a lot more than usual." O'Brien tells everyone about how Captain Maxwell's family was killed by Cardassians during a raid on a civilian outpost during the war. Gul Macet's like, "Well, that explains it. He wants to take revenge on us for murdering his family, which we totally did." O'Brien says, "No, Captain Maxwell would never." While Picard, Gul Macet, and the others head to the bridge, O'Brien and Macet's officers share an elevator. One of the Cardassians tries to make small talk with O'Brien and even invites him to tend forward for a drink. But O'Brien's not having it. He's like, "What I do in my own time is my own business. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to force-feed my wife a truly ungodly amount of potatoes." O'Brien leaves, and the other two Cardassians look at each other like, wow, I really hate to see the mindless prejudice against Cardassians held by that human. Yeah, they're all like that. O'Brien goes home, heaps about 20 pounds of potato casserole onto Keiko's plate, and as he does, she can't help but notice the song he's mumble-singing to himself. She's like, "What's all that about?" And he says, "Oh, it's just a song we used to sing together on the Rutledge when I served under Captain Maxwell. Don't worry, it comes back later. How do you like the potatoes? What are these dark things? Capers, hopefully. Say, honey, I've noticed the strangest thing. People on this ship don't seem to like the Cardassians, but the war is over. There's no reason for us to dislike them any longer. I'm sure glad I can't relate to those feelings." Keiko says, "Really? You fought the Cardassians? You really don't feel any lingering resentment toward them?" And O'Brien's like, "So what are you saying, I'm racist? Maybe you wouldn't be able to say such ugly things to your husband if you were eating the meal I slaved away in front of a food manufacturing computer terminal to make for you. Maybe instead of calling me a bigot, you should fill your hateful mouth with potatoes and capers!" Back to the bridge, where Picard and Massette watch as they track the Phoenix on long-range sensors. They're still too far away to intercept, so they're forced to watch on the space radar as Maxwell attacks and destroys 2 Cardassian ships, including a supply ship with minimal defenses. Picard orders them to increase speed to intercept Maxwell as soon as possible. Then he heads down to the transporter room to chat with Chief O'Brien. Picard says to O'Brien, "So you've served with Captain Maxwell?" And O'Brien puckers up real good and says, "Yes, sir. I'm lucky to have served with the 2 finest captains in the fleet." So one of them is obviously me. Who's the other one? Captain Maxwell. Really? The guy who's gone rogue and might start a war? I'm in the same category as him? Oh man, did this ass-kissing ever backfire on you? Picard asks O'Brien about the killing of Maxwell's family during the massacre the Cardassians carried out on Setlik 3. How'd Maxwell take that? Everyone he loved being wiped out by a hated enemy. O'Brien says, "Oh, he took it pretty good. He never missed work. He always had a smile or a joke. Even at his family's memorial service, you should have been there. He destroyed." O'Brien insists that Maxwell would never go off on a vengeance quest, and that he must have a good reason for attacking the Cardassians like this. Picard says, "I think maybe it's just that he's grown too comfortable being angry at the Cardassians. So comfortable that he can't remember feeling any other way. So comfortable even that he doesn't even realize how angry and full of hatred he still is." Well, I can't relate since I'm not angry at the Cardassians at all. Okay, back to Windexing the touchscreens, or whatever the hell you do. After he's done Windexing the touchscreens, O'Brien heads to 10 Forward to get good and liquored up before going home, and he sees Darrow, one of the Cardassians who tried to make small talk in the turbo lift earlier. O'Brien says, "Hey man, sorry if I was a dick to you before. I'm just slowly waking up to the fact that I'm carrying around a ton of unacknowledged casual bigotry toward deceitful, murdering cowards like everyone in your species. It's not you, it's me." Darrow's like, "No worries, we get it all the time." The Enterprise finally catches up to the Phoenix, and Captain Maxwell beams aboard to discuss his recent roaring, raging rampage of revenge. Maxwell immediately recognizes O'Brien and greets him happily. "This guy was the best tactical officer I ever had," Maxwell says of O'Brien to Commander Riker. "He has the ability to size up any situation immediately and give you options to fit all contingencies. Truly one of the most remarkable people I've ever served with." And Riker's like, "Well, we've got him running the transporter." Maxwell goes to meet with Picard in the ready room, and Picard's like, "So, hey, what's with all the mass murders lately?" Maxwell insists that none of the outposts or ships he's attacked were as innocent as they appeared. The Cardassians are secretly building up for another war in violation of the peace treaty. Picard says, "Where's your evidence? Because you need evidence, man. You can't just start attacking people on the basis of nothing more than your own groundless, paranoid, deeply prejudiced convictions. Can you imagine if that's how powerful people operated? That would be so bad." And Maxwell says, "Evidence? You sound like a pussy. Don't ask me pussy-ass questions with your pussy mouth. Picard says, okay, so here's how this is going to go. You're returning to your ship, and you're coming with us back to the nearest starbase. Because I respected you up until now, and because this is obviously your fucked up way of trying to avenge the deaths of your family, I will allow you to retain command of your ship during the trip home. But any funny business, and you're coming back here, and we'll just tow the Phoenix to starbase. Got it? Maxwell returns to the Phoenix, and pretty much immediately breaks off and attacks the nearest Cardassian supply ship. Picard's like, God, I just told him! This guy! Picard calls O'Brien to the bridge like, Riker told me Captain Maxwell said you were the greatest tactical officer he'd ever met, able to come up with options for every situation. Captain Maxwell is about to force me to fire on him to protect the Cardassian ship he's attacking. What should I do? I don't know. Maxwell calls the Enterprise and says, you want evidence, Captain Pussyface? You've got it. Board this Cardassian ship and you'll see. It's probably full of guns or bombs or something. Picard refuses to board the Cardassian ship, so Maxwell says, well, I guess I'll just blow it up then. O'Brien steps up and says, Captain Picard, let me beam over to the Phoenix and talk to Captain Maxwell. Maybe I can get through to him. I can beam through their shields between technobabble cycles. I just Windexed the control panels. I know I can do it. Picard gives him the go-ahead, so O'Brien beams over to the Phoenix. Fortunately, Maxwell has shut himself in his office during this tense standoff with both a Cardassian ship and the Enterprise, instead of being out on the bridge, surrounded by his own crew, which might have been awkward. O'Brien says, hey, if you keep messing around like this, Captain Picard's probably just going to kill you, so maybe stop? The war is over. Maxwell says, nothing is over! It wasn't my war! They asked me, I didn't ask them! He says that Cardassians live to make war, and they're different from humans because humans don't make surprise attacks and kill civilians. It's a work of fiction, just go with it. The two of them reminisce about the old days when they served together. Maxwell remembers one of their crewmates who also died at Setlik 3. Stompy. He sounds fun. Ironically, he was crushed to death. Anyway, he and O'Brien used to sing that song O'Brien was singing with Keiko earlier. Maxwell always liked it. The Minstrel Boy, it's called. And if you don't remember which Irish folk song that is, it's the melancholy one about bravery in the face of certain death. O'Brien and Maxwell share a sad little duet of The Minstrel Boy, and Maxwell says, I'm fucked, aren't I? And O'Brien says, aye, Captain Pussymouth has your bollocks in a bindle this time. So, Maxwell surrenders. Later, in the observation lounge aboard the Enterprise, O'Brien finishes up his report to Captain Picard and says, I know Captain Maxwell murdered hundreds of people in a misguided quest for retribution that nearly started an interstellar war, but I still think deep down he's a good guy. Picard's like, thanks, Chief. Now get back in your closet. Picard turns to Gul Macet, the only one left in the room now, and says, one more thing. I think Captain Maxwell was right about you guys. Oh, I don't have any evidence either, and unlike him, I'm not going to risk starting a war over my hunches, but those so-called scientific research stations of yours sure are positioned in strategically valuable locations, and those so-called supply ships Maxwell attacked had awfully sophisticated sensor-blocking shields, didn't they? Go back home and tell your leaders that we'll be watching, Gul Macet. And tell that identical cousin of yours in the Bajaran system to start winding down that genocide he's been doing because we want to get this spin-off on its feet in the next few years. The end. You know, I don't think this Ben Maxwell guy is fit to be a starship captain. He'd be better off at another job, like maybe a prison warden, or dean of a medical school, or mob accountant, something better suited to his natural gifts. I referred to this episode earlier as the backdoor pilot for Deep Space Nine, and while that's not literally the case, I do think The Wounded represents the creators of TNG taking some of the themes and concepts that would eventually become central to DS9 out for a test drive. The result, no surprise given how much I love DS9, is one of my favorite episodes of TNG. Most obvious among the DS9-esque elements on the surface level is the introduction of the Cardassians. They go on to become very important to Deep Space Nine, and arguably the most important Cardassian character, Gul Dukat, is played by Mark Alimo, who plays Gul Macet here, Judging just by this episode, you might not expect the Cardassians to become major players in a new series, but it does seem like we're meant to think of them as more than just another disposable bunch of bad guy aliens. The character design will continue to evolve from here, especially the costumes. What's with those weird head cages they have on in the first couple of scenes? But it's clear even at this early stage that some thought has been put into how the Cardassians appear. They aren't just humans with funny ears or some random colors painted on their faces. They have a look. So do their ships. That's a big clue that the producers are hoping to bring these guys back after this episode. The fact that they didn't just grab a random alien ship model that they'd used in a previous episode and use that. They designed an original Cardassian ship, and they did a good job. I've always liked the look of the Cardassian ships with the wide, kind of diamond-shaped head at the front and the tail section trailing behind like big metal space cobras. The other introduction in this episode that goes on to play a big part on Deep Space Nine is Chief O'Brien, though it's really a reintroduction since Colm Meaney's been playing O'Brien since the first episode of the series. Since before they even established that his name was O'Brien, The Wounded is O'Brien's introduction as something more than a guy in the background who occasionally has a few lines. Now, he's a character we're meant to invest in and care about. Before this, even his wedding to Keiko was presented in service to Data's story. Now, O'Brien has his own space in this episode, his own purpose to serve. Watching it now, knowing what was to come, it plays a bit like an unofficial audition for Colm Meaney to be a regular on the upcoming spin-off, and obviously, he passed with flying colors. Beyond featuring characters that will go on to become staples of the series, The Wounded also includes themes that will be very familiar to anyone who watches Deep Space Nine. Captain Maxwell isn't the first member of Starfleet to go off the rails, as demonstrated by the theme of this batch of episode reviews, but he is different from other examples of Starfleet gone bad that we've seen up to this point. He's not insane. He hasn't been compromised by mind control. He's not trying to overthrow a government or set himself up as any sort of authority. His actions threaten to start a war, but that seems incidental to him, especially since, to him, the war never really ended anyway. Maxwell is, as the title of the episode tells us, wounded. TNG has dealt with the effects of trauma before, most notably in the episode Family from earlier this same season, where we see Captain Picard struggling with the lingering psychological effects of his assimilation by the Borg. But Maxwell's trauma is very different from Picard's. For one thing, Picard's experience with the Borg had literally just happened. It was still fresh. For another, Picard's assimilation was, at least as far as we'd seen in the show to that point, a singular experience. Maxwell's trauma isn't fresh, and it isn't unique. It's a wound that was inflicted many years ago, a scar that never healed, and a scar that many other people carry as well. In real life, nobody knows what it's like to be abducted and transformed into a Borg, because that never happens. But lots of people know what it's like to lose loved ones the way Maxwell lost his family. The destruction of war, physical and psychological, is very real and very much at the heart of this story. Maxwell does something terrible, but he does it in response to the sort of pain and stress that many people experience every day, and which, presumably, many people who serve in Starfleet have also experienced, implying that service in Starfleet isn't always the uplifting adventure we're usually shown it to be, and that not everyone in Starfleet is as perfectly balanced and emotionally impervious as Gene Roddenberry envisioned when he created the series. Plot-wise, the episode, written by legendary TNG writer and producer Jerry Taylor from an original story by Stuart Charno, Sarah Charno, and Cy Chermak, is very well put together. The exposition introducing the Cardassians and establishing their war with the Federation, and Picard's own participation in it back in the day, is dispensed with quickly and cleanly. O'Brien's entry into the story is handled smoothly, and I like how his food-related bit with Keiko sets up something to be paid off later, so we have a reason to come back to them other than time for O'Brien and Keiko to talk about his lingering racism against Cardassians. Speaking of O'Brien's hard feelings toward the Cardassians, which he denies, but which are definitely present, they're shown not in a sympathetic light, but in a humanizing one. It's not good or right that O'Brien, not to mention Maxwell, harbors these feelings, apparently blaming all Cardassians for wartime atrocities the Cardassians in this episode apparently had nothing directly to do with, but it's understandable given what he's lived through. And though his anti-Cardassian sentiments will stay with him through his time on Deep Space Nine, O'Brien at least has enough self-awareness to realize that those sentiments aren't justified, which puts him way ahead of way too many of us. Because the Enterprise spends most of the episode chasing down Maxwell's ship, the Phoenix, from a distance, we only see Maxwell's attacks on the Cardassian ships in the form of tactical displays on the view screen. This turns out to be a very effective way of presenting it, though. The simplicity of the graphics allows the gravity of what Maxwell is doing to land in a way I'm not sure showing us the actual attacks up close would have. The ships Maxwell targets are dots on the screen 1 second, and the next they're just gone, while the dot representing Maxwell's ship just glides on to the next target. Maxwell himself is teased for most of the episode before we finally see him on screen, and when he does show up, he does not disappoint. Bob Gunton is one of the best, most reliable character actors of his generation, and he turns in a great performance as Maxwell. He really only has 2 scenes of real importance, one with Picard in the Ready Room on the Enterprise and the one at the end with O'Brien in the Ready Room on the Phoenix. Through both scenes, Gunton is able to show us how dangerous Maxwell is and also how deeply broken he is. His conversation with Picard is tense, combative. Maxwell is evasive and suspicious. His talk with O'Brien starts that way, but then the man starts to wilt as he gives in to the nostalgia brought over by his old comrade. In both modes, aggressive and defeated, Gunton plays Maxwell as someone hanging on by a thread, and he's never less than riveting while he's on screen. I've always loved the bit with O'Brien and Maxwell singing The Minstrel Boy. Yes, it's corny, especially the way Maxwell drops out and lets O'Brien sing the last line all by himself. But you know what? It's a beautiful song, plaintive, almost inexpressibly sad, but also elevating in its portrayal of selfless devotion to a higher cause. And the scene where O'Brien and Maxwell sing it is played in fearless earnest, and I am a sucker for earnestness. Cleverness and irony and cynicism all have their places. God knows I lean on them pretty heavily, especially the latter two, which require far less effort than the former. But there is nothing quite so powerful as sincerity. In true Star Trek fashion, and particularly true TNG fashion, for despite the many proto-DS9 elements, this is still a quintessential TNG episode, O'Brien is able to resolve the crisis with Maxwell without further violence, using the power of words and song to convince his former captain that, whether he likes it or not, his crusade against the Cardassians is finally over. General Sherman said war is hell. In The Wounded, Star Trek reminds us that for some of those who survive it, the hell can last a lot longer than the war. Those are my thoughts on The Wounded. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as this Starfleet gone bad batch of reviews continues. We move on from TNG to Deep Space Nine, fitting after the show I reviewed in this video, and take a look at the episode that introduces us to one of the foremost representatives of the dark side of Starfleet. That representative is Luther Sloan, and that episode from Deep Space Nine's 6th season is Inquisition. See you next time. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.